Hello there. Welcome to Planet America's Fireside Chat. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Licciardello.
It is under 3 weeks now until voting comes to an end. The election is actually already underway. We'll look at the candidates' closing arguments and some of the controversies as well.
And we're going to see how the recent hurricanes are affecting the battleground state of North Carolina. And I have some malarkey to bust. But first...
This week, Vice President Harris has continued to reach out to Republicans, appearing at a rally in Pennsylvania yesterday, flanked by around 100 former Republican leaders and prominent conservatives who are now firmly in the Never Trump camp. The scene of this rally was significant as well. Washington Crossing outside Philadelphia. That's where General Washington led troops across the icy Delaware River to fight a victorious battle in the War of Independence from Britain. And Harris framed this election as being about preserving the republic that was founded almost 250 years ago.
In a typical election year, you all being here with me might be a bit surprising, dare I say unusual. But not in this election. Not in this election. Because at stake in this race are the democratic ideals that our founders and generations of Americans before us have fought for.
Interesting return to some of the messaging that Joe Biden was using early in the campaign. And it was later in that day that Harris took part in her first interview on Fox News as a presidential candidate. It was with Breit Baier, a journalist and presenter who's part of the notionally objective news division of Fox, not a part of their evening lineup of pro-Trumpy commentators like Jesse Waters, Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham. Although before the interview, Donald Trump was trying to push Brett to be a little bit more like Jesse, Laura and Sean.
Lying Kamala Harris has wisely chosen Breit Baier of Fox News to do a much-needed interview because he is considered to be fair and balanced, though often very soft to those on the cocktail circuit left.
Breit Baier began, though, with a series of pretty tough questions about the Biden administration's border policies. Harris tried to shift blame onto Congress and avoid some direct answers, and Baier got pretty interrupty trying to pin her down.
Actually, pathway to citizenship for the...
Yes, ma'am. May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
and they didn't bring up that bill. I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising,
okay.
And I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the last cocktail party he'll be invited to for a while. Harris was clearly not there to answer awkward immigration policy questions beyond blaming Trump for scuttling the bipartisan border bill earlier this year. And she certainly wasn't there to try and answer obvious gotcha questions like this one.
When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Bad journalism. A simple, did Joe Biden's mental faculties ever appear diminished to you, Madam Vice President? Would have been fine. Generally, Breit Baier is the best of a bad lot on Fox, although he did try to get the network to retract their call that Biden had won Arizona in 2020, and he did report false news that Hillary Clinton had been indicted before the 2016 election, but he's comparatively good. Still, Harris was really there to get in some attack lines against Trump in front of an audience that doesn't usually hear anything other than praise for the former president.
Listen. Over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president, one, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
That's, of course, a classic play to defend yourself by attacking your opponent. Makes sense. But at times, I thought Harris pushed that tactic just a bit too far. If we look at the start of her answer for that very clip you just played, you can see how desperately she was trying to change the topic from anything straight to Trump.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page You've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam Vice President.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become...
I don't know what she meant either, Brett, but I know it had something to do with Trump, like all her answers did.
Yeah, in that moment, I mean, clearly she should have said, when you look at that wrong track measure, it always, voters, doesn't matter who's president, back over the last 40 years, America's always on the wrong track, according to that measure. So it's not really, it doesn't say anything about Biden and Harris.
Great answer. You got my vote.
Thank you.
Having said that, as Harris does more interviews, she is fine-tuning her answers. Like last week, I said on the show that I couldn't believe she still didn't have a basic answer for what's different between her and Joe Biden, the question she keeps on getting asked.
Yeah.
Well, now she has an answer.
You're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses.
Make a firm statement, cite one personal difference, then change the topic to your preferred policies. Just like I coached her to do last week, she watches.
Well, you've got my vote. At one point in this interview, Breit Baier tried to goad Harris into criticising Trump supporters. Maybe he wanted to make some news, or maybe he just wants to keep his job at Fox. But either way, she did not fall for what was a pretty obvious trap.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is
God,
it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within.
Yeah, she's really hammering that enemy within point at the moment. And this is the kind of thing she's talking about. This is when Trump was threatening to use the military against American citizens, left-wingers that he's now describing as the enemy from within.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. It should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
And there's a really interesting exchange around that whole issue, because Breit Baier played what Trump had said in a Fox town hall event earlier in that day when he had been asked about using the phrase enemy within. Trump, in that town hall, denied it, basically. He denied everything.
A question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you...
That was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that.
Now, that was a pretty combative, passionate and forceful response from Harris against Breit Baier, basically accusing him in that moment of bias, and not really entirely fair of Breit Baier, accusing him of playing a misleading clip, because he did explain the context of it, that it was Trump's response to those criticisms of his inflammatory rhetoric. But Brett wasn't really playing this interview straight, so why should Kamala Harris? Ultimately, if Harris's objective was to project strength after striding into enemy territory on Fox News, I think she did that quite well. As for what people made of it, Ideological Rorschach test, the reactions on cable news, pretty predictable. On CNN, the pundits were quite impressed.
That was a home run.
And back on Fox News, not so much.
Her answers are not going to pass the smell test.
As for viewer-in-chief Donald J. Trump,
Great job by Breit Baier in his interview with Lion Kamala Harris. She has a massive and irredeemable case of Trump derangement syndrome.
so they were all spiking the football, saying there was a terrible performance from Kamala Harris. I didn't see that as a terrible performance from Kamala Harris. It was an odd dynamic in the interview. Breit Baier later excused his being interrupted by saying, oh, she was running 15 minutes late, and then quite quickly her people were sort of going wind up, wind up, wind up. He had to turn the interview around to go to air half an hour later, so it was all a bit flustered or something. Felt, no about you, but it felt to me almost like less of an interview and more kind of seeing half of a debate, the Fox News debate we never got.
Yeah.
It was Breit Baier, who often hosts debates, asking questions, Harris wanting to turn the attack onto Trump the whole time. So, yeah, it was a strange dynamic, but I think Harris, she won the day because she went there and she looked strong, she looked tough. I don't know if it wins her a single vote, but it will certainly impress her supporters, if not win over the undecided.
Yeah, I don't disagree with much of what you said there, to be honest. I think that that she's not convincing any Fox News viewers of her case, but I do think she held her own. I actually think she's better when she's on edge. I think when she's on edge and sharp and a bit sort of strident, I think she's better than when she's chummy and loungy. And that's when you get the word salads when she's just sitting around shooting the breeze for minutes on end.
Right.
There's none of that with this interview, which I thought was much better personally.
Yep.
I agree that I mean, I understand why Breit Baier was trying to just squeeze as much in as he could because the interview was shorter than he expected it to be. I did think it was not becoming how much talkover there was. There were times when he was interrupting her 5 seconds into her answer, which was kind of ridiculous. And she was trying to give off strength by not being a pushover. And so she just kept on barneying through. At the same time, he was trying to go over the top of her. And it wasn't an edifying experience to watch. Yeah. But I think they both achieved what they wanted to. I do think as well, there's been some Republicans they've kind of switched their demands. There was for a while she needs to do more interviews. She needs to do more interviews, and now she's doing interviews, including on Fox News. Yeah, they're saying, "Oh, this is a sign of desperation." Right. I think you got to pick one of the other guys. Yeah. Like, I mean, I've been criticising her for not doing enough interviews. Now I take that criticism back. She's doing enough interviews. The last 2 weeks has been great. I wish she'd been doing that the whole time. And I think she's improving as she's going.
She absolutely is. Yeah. And I think if you compare this to her first interviews, the Stephanie Rule interview 3 weeks ago, when she did Dana Bash early on as well, softer interviews, less combative interviews, and she wasn't as sharp. I think Harris is continuing to build. If Harris wins this election, then her campaign is going to look as though it was perfect. The tempo was perfect. The build of a message, of her skills as a candidate, she is getting better and better and better at a time where it feels to me, looking at a lot of her rallies and a lot of her speeches compared to a lot of Trump's rallies and Trump's speeches, he's not getting better. You can debate how much worse he's getting, but he's definitely not getting better. He's not getting more disciplined and more focused. Harris is not only getting better, but she is also not just sticking to the same 5 talking points she had in her launch speech that we all got a bit sick of, the I know his type kind of stuff. We heard too many of those canned lines too many times. She's now building on that. She's putting in comments from today's news cycle into her rallies now. This is a sign of confidence. Yeah. Now, it might be off the teleprompter, but she's even playing clips into her rallies, which is an old Trump trick. She's now attacking Trump and what he is saying on a daily basis. And I think it's working for her. Whether it wins her enough votes to win the election, still don't know. But I think as a candidate, the people around her must be feeling pretty good about the fact that she's getting better, not worse.
She's definitely improving, and she didn't mention that she grew up in the middle class. Once during her Fox interview, she's improving as she's going on. And it is interesting, when you compare that to Trump, it's interesting that as she's picking up more interviews, he's starting to drop them. He's not turning up at CNBC.
And he's dancing for 39 minutes at his own rally.
Well, there's that as well. He's not doing 60 minutes. So they are changing what now. There might be all kinds of reasons for this, but I think that she is moving in the right direction. If she loses, they'll say, why didn't you do this a month earlier? But I do want to just draw attention to one thing, which is that Trump grab from
the enemy
before,
within.
the enemy within grab. I find it really interesting that the clip that they played, that Breit Baier played, of Trump now just pretending he never said it. Because this does seem to be the new tactic of the Republicans. I know Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin tried to gaslight Jake Tapper, who, despite the fact he played the clip straight at Glenn Youngkin, then Glenn Youngkin pretended that Trump never said it.
Criminals should be locked up. Migrants who are in this country illegally, who are violent, should be locked up and deported. I grant you all of that, and I am not denying that it's happening at all.
So,
But I'm talking about Donald Trump saying that he wants to use the National Guard and the military to go after the left. That's what he's saying.
I don't believe that's what he's saying. But listen, you and I are going to argue about that. But I would suggest if you would also.
I played the quote and I read it to you.
If you would also
you
balance
can wish that he weren't saying that, but that's what he's saying.
Jake, all the time, people are taking little snippets of content and turning it into a big narrative. I think exactly what he's concerned about, because I've heard him express it before, are the number of national security risks, violent criminals, and folks who are coming into this country where we don't know where they are, that are committing crimes and put people's safety at risk.
He did not say that. Trump explicitly said he was not talking about migrants. So this is an extraordinary tactic, because this clip is being played a lot. As you said, Kamala Harris is playing it all the time. In fact, I'll give them a brickbat here. Harris and Walls, I think, are misrepresenting what Trump said a little bit. This is Tim Walls misrepresenting what Trump said.
Donald Trump over the weekend was talking about using the U.S. Army against people who disagree with him. Just so you're clear about that, that's you. That's what he's talking about. This is not some mythical thing out there. He called it the enemy within. And to Donald Trump, anybody who doesn't agree with him is the enemy.
He did not say that he's going to set the military on people who he disagrees with. He was talking about unrest on election day. He was implying that there was maybe violence involved or arson or looting or whatever. But you don't need to misrepresent it. It was bad enough. I often say people are misrepresenting Trump, and what he's saying can be interpreted in different ways. In this case, there is no doubt what he was saying. He was saying he wants to set the military potentially on protesters. Violent protesters, maybe, but still protesters. It's against the law. And even if there's a looting, even if there's a fire, an arson situation, let's say one person sets a fire or there's a few violent people, the people next to them aren't violent. The military would be affecting them as well. That's how you end the right to protest. And I think of all the things Trump has said, this is amongst the worst. There's no way you can spin this at all. And so I can't understand why they're disappearing it, I have to say.
And it doesn't need exaggeration, although in a similar context, Trump has talked about who is the enemy within. He's gone further than sort of saying, Antifa rioters on election day, and he's talked about, he's named Adam Schiff, for example, the Democratic candidate for Senate in California, Nancy Pelosi, and so on. He talks about the media being the enemy of the people. So, there is related rhetoric, which is what I guess Waltz and Harris are kind of teasing out. He's not specifically just talking about election day. He's talking about using the military to intimidate and suppress protests or demonstrations from the left.
Yeah, look, just to be clear, I don't think there's any danger of him seeing the military at Adam Schiff. But he absolutely means seeing the military on protesters. He's said that a number of times now. This is not a one-off. And he said it in public, in an interview directly before an election when people have been calling him a dictator for the last 6 months. So clearly he doesn't think it's a problem to say that.
Right.
He means it.
And according to former administration officials like Mark Esper, he wanted to open fire on protesters when he was president, and he has no doubt that he would do it again given the opportunity.
Anyway, I just want to draw a line.
Well, Donald Trump attended an all-female town hall event in the state of Georgia yesterday. It was also broadcast on Fox News. It was moderated by Fox presenter Harris Faulkner. And this is how Faulkner talked about the event after it had been taped the day before it had gone to air.
Listening to these women, who some of them had left their jobs to be here today because they wanted to be among a crowd asking real questions that felt like reality to them.
How real were the questions, though? The reality, though, was that Trump got a very, very warm reception.
Welcome.
loving him.
They loved him so much. There was quite a happy crowd. And after 5 minutes of introductory conversation, it was time for Trump to take the first question.
Your first name, please, and tell us your hometown.
My name is Lisa, and I live in the city of Milton. First of all, welcome back to Georgia, President Trump.
What a friendly welcome. But it turns out Lisa isn't just any Lisa. Her name is Lisa Corley. She represents the local Fulton County Republican Women's Group. In fact, according to CNN, the Georgia Federation of Republican Women's Groups posted on their Facebook page that they were hosting this Trump event. There was no mention of that in the Fox News introduction. Fox said actually no, it was the host of the event, and then suddenly the women's Facebook page quickly changed to say they were attending the event. The word hosting removed. Very curious. In fact, several attendees at this event freely admitted that they were involved with various Republican groups in the state of Georgia. One telling reporters they got a personal invitation from Fox News to attend, and they were very, very excited. And according to CNN, who obtained audio recordings of the full town hall, Fox edited out some parts of the event. Again, not unusual. You've got to fit it into an hour slot, but they edited out some interesting moments, like when the crowd started chanting, "Trump, Trump!" and when one questioner told Trump that she'd proudly voted for him, adding, "I hope they count it." So it definitely seems that Fox News invited a lot of very Republican Trump supporters. And that'd be okay too if they just want to fill the room. You've got a live audience for a town hall. But they should have told their TV audience they'd stack that crowd with Republicans. And it would have been also a good idea if they'd sent out as many invitations to Democratic women's groups to ask some perhaps less favourable questions. There is absolutely no evidence that they reached out to anyone other than Republican women. Fox let their TV viewers believe that this was a random group of women, and they then edited out their overt support of Trump, arguably to make the thing look less biased than it clearly was. So it's a bit of a stitch-up. Meanwhile, the crowd at a Univision town hall event yesterday was clearly not biased in favour of Trump, and they were certainly not impressed with his rewriting of history about the attack on the US Capitol on January 6, 2021 by his own supporters. He called it, quote, a day of love. And watch the response from the woman on the left in the audience when Trump claims that nobody was killed on January 6th.
They didn't come because of me. They came because of the election. They thought the election was a rigged election, and that's why they came. Some of those people went down to the Capitol. I said peacefully and patriotically, nothing done wrong at all, nothing done wrong. And action was taken, strong action. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns. And when I say we, these are people that walked down. This was a tiny percentage of the overall, which nobody sees and nobody shows. But that was a day of love.
And that little exchange there, Chaz, has already generated at least two memes. One, of course, that woman doing the double take.
Yes.
And the other being Trump describing it as a day of love. Already some of the Capitol police officers who were injured on that day, as well as the 4 that lost their lives in subsequent periods and were injured and so on, have sent out tweets saying, well, I was not feeling the love on that day. So pretty bad gaffe. Trump.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I'd just like to talk about some policy quickly. Talking about Trump, back on Wednesday, I mentioned one of his new policies is not taxing expats, because at the moment in America, Americans who live overseas, they get taxed in America as well as the country that they are living in. And that's been a source of quite a lot of annoyance to these people, because America is the only country in the world that does this other than Eritrea for some reason. But now and Trump's policy is just to get rid of it. Get rid of what he calls double taxation.
Right.
If you live overseas, you can just get taxed overseas and that's it. Now, there's reason for the policy of taxing people overseas. First of all, they don't tax poor people when they're overseas. The first $126,000 that you earn overseas, tax-free, as far as America is concerned.
Right, yep.
Right? Then on top of that, they give you a tax deduction for your living expenses overseas, and they also give you a tax deduction for any tax that you pay overseas. So the bottom line is, I think it's only the top 18% of expats pay any tax whatsoever back to America. So, and the logic of this is that America has a lot of billionaires, like really big billionaires. And if, let's say America wants to tax them say, a wealth tax or something like that, and then say Elon Musk goes, well, I'm going to Bermuda, and I can still live my life, and it's very easy for them to do that. And then with America, they don't let you do that. You can move to Bermuda, but you're still paying taxes in America. That's the logic. So that makes sense. But we got contacted by a lot of expats during the week. Surprisingly, American expats watch Planet America. And what they said, they put the other side of this to me, this issue. They said, look, most of us are not Elon Musk. Most of us are actually not rich at all. And they said, yeah, we don't pay tax necessarily, but we have to do compliance. And compliance is very annoying and it's quite onerous. And every year we're paying hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to accountants, even though we don't pay any tax, just to jump through these loops because this ridiculous system that America has that no other country has. And so what do you think about that? What's your thought?
Yeah, it sounds to me like yet another tax policy from Trump, which looks as though it's helping ordinary people, but is in fact helping the very, very rich. A fairer version of this would be to say we'll raise that threshold from 126,000 to $500,000. So we're just creating this disincentive for the super wealthy to offshore their finances. That would seem to me to be a good idea, but I'd be interested to know what the people who are watching Planet America and the Fireside Chat, how they think this policy would play out and whether they would even have them think, no, I could actually support Trump because of this, because it would save us time and money. That's
a good call, actually. If you are an expat who's watching the show and you pay this overseas taxation, this double taxation, please get in contact with us through our Facebook page. Let us know what it's like. What's the compliance actually like in the real world? What do you think of Trump's policies? Do you think it's a great policy? Could this change your vote? Let us know all you have to say about this, because we never get first-hand information on any of the things we talk about. So I'd love to get some. Get in contact with us. Let us know. Just as an aside, I can't imagine the IRS would do anything if you didn't do the compliance costs. Do you think they're going to chase someone down like a dog in Australia because they didn't pay a couple $100 to an accountant? I don't know. Maybe they would. I got no idea.
Yeah. Maybe if Elon Musk moves out here, then they might chase him down.
They might chase him down. Also, the good thing about this is next time there's a pandemic, you get twice the payouts as well. Let's not forget that.
Oh, well, there's a silver lining to the next pandemic at last. Now, to the battleground state of North Carolina, a state which is very much up for grabs this year, according to polls. Trump is leading by under a point in the average, although a Quinnipiac poll this week had Harris leading by 2. But this is a state that Republicans have won pretty consistently ever since the 1960s. Only victories for Democrats were Jimmy Carter in 1976, Barack Obama in 2008. 3 weeks ago, of course, a real wild card. The mountainous west of North Carolina was hit by Hurricane Helene, and it dumped a massive amount of rain on the area. Some gauges like 800 millimetres of rain. It was extraordinary. And there were floods, but massive flash floods in mountainous regions that don't usually flood. They don't have insurance. At least 200 people are feared dead. Many, many thousands are without homes, without their cars, without power, without drinking water. And amid all of this, of course, there's an election, and this is a battleground state. Early voting got underway today. So we wanted to know, what is the impact of the aftermath of the storm having? And we had a couple of guests on this. First, we spoke to Cynthia Wallace. She runs a non-partisan, not-for-profit that is trying to engage young and rural voters in North Carolina.
So it was definitely very unfortunate, and we are, we're still so concerned about the folks that are still missing in some parts of Western North Carolina. Obviously, this happened so close to the election. Some of the things that were already in the works, there was already over 50,000 absentee ballots that had been sent to 25 of the North Carolina counties that were designated Helene disaster areas. And only 9,000 of those have been returned. So one of the things that I know the Board of Elections we have here, which administers our elections in North Carolina, they have been working to reach out to those 45,000 folks who haven't returned their ballots. They've also made some allowances, such as if you are displaced from Western North Carolina or from your home, folks can order a new absentee ballot and then return it to a early voting or an election day polling site anywhere in North Carolina.
Cynthia, is early voting available everywhere in North Carolina? And do you think there have been enough concessions made in the flood-affected regions for the vote to go smoothly?
Early voting is available in all 100 of North Carolina's counties. And the time frame of early voting, starting on October 17th, ending on November 2nd, is consistent everywhere across the state. What is allowed by the state laws is that counties then can make their own decisions about what their voting hours are, which Saturdays they're open during that window of 2.5 weeks, which Sundays are they open over those 2.5 weeks. So those things are pretty consistent. One of the things that is concerning, because I am the executive director of New Rural Project, is in these rural small counties, they actually only have one early voting location in many of these counties. So thinking about those impacted Eastern North Carolina counties that may have one or two early voting sites, and if one of them is closed, that is definitely impactful to the access and the opportunity for folks to be able to vote.
And is it safe to assume while this sort of post-storm recovery period is making it harder for everybody in North Carolina to vote, it is making it particularly hard for the most disadvantaged North Carolinians?
I think it's similar to anything, those folks who are a part of the historically marginalized communities, those Black, Hispanic, Native American voters, those folks who are actually economically distressed already. When something like this happens, they like the resources to rebound like someone who has more means. I don't know that this is harder for folks all across the state. I definitely think it is going to be a little bit more difficult for the folks in Western North Carolina. But as I mentioned, our Board of Elections, they have been working overtime, trying to figure out how to ensure that elections continue. North Carolina, honestly, is actually no stranger to this kind of situation happening. Back in 2018, in the eastern part of North Carolina, we had a hurricane just days before the 2018 election. I believe there was another one in 2019. And so our Board of Elections, I believe they had to extend hours. They made some concessions when there were polling locations that were just closed for certain days because of the storm. And so while I don't think this will be perfect, I do have some confidence that the folks who are running our elections have experienced this, maybe not at this magnitude, but have had to respond, even in the areas where I've worked, with a short amount of time to hurricane or weather disruptions to our election process.
And for another perspective, we spoke to Rusty Jacobs. He covers voting and election integrity issues for North Carolina Public Radio.
Challenges notwithstanding, the turnout has been strong across North Carolina today, and that includes Western North Carolina. Now, I'm in Durham, the central part of the state, but earlier in the week, I was in Western North Carolina. I met with elections officials, residents in places like Haywood County, which is about 20 miles or so west of Asheville and Buncombe County, another hard-hit part of the state because of Helene, and in McDowell County, another small area. And one of the elections officials I spoke with on Monday predicted that despite the challenges, despite the hardships that people in her community are wrestling with, she expected a lot of people would turn out as soon as early voting started. And that is indeed what has happened. Elections director in Haywood County texted him earlier, and he said it was a record day. Same goes for other parts of Western North Carolina. And as you've heard, turnout, hours-long waits in places like Wake County, one of the more populous counties of North Carolina. So people are seizing the chance to finally exercise the franchise.
In the non-flood affected regions of North Carolina, has the election been proceeding just like in the rest of the country? Or has it been throughout North Carolina, all flood, all the time for the last month?
No, I mean, clearly the people in Western North Carolina, in the 25 county-wide disaster area from Helene are dealing with the bare necessities. Some people still are waiting for water to come back on. But in the rest of the state, I mean, North Carolina is a swing state. It is one of the states considered critical to both campaigns. It's neck and neck as far as the polls go. The race comes down to issues people read every day in their newspapers or see discussed on their news programs. Reproductive rights, access to abortion, and other female health interests and health treatments, the inflation and other aspects of the economy, immigration, and frankly, defense of democracy. These are all the issues that have been preoccupying voters' minds, certainly in terms of the interviews I've done.
Rusty, how big an issue is the aftermath of the hurricane itself and the way that state and federal authorities responded to it, well or not so well, and how political leaders may have tried to politicise it? How is that filtering through to the campaign?
If you listen to news programs and you get clips of campaign rallies, you might hear somebody like Donald Trump saying Republican residents of Western North Carolina aren't getting the services they need. And you might hear some retort from the other side. But the bottom line is, if you go to Western North Carolina, like I did earlier this week, and you speak to people, you don't hear partisanship. What you really hear are stories, one after the other, stories of people coming together, communities brought together, not separated by this experience. I visited a church in Haywood County where the pastor had opened up her church to evacuees as soon as the storm hit. They've been serving meals. And there, the people are talking about how more than 40 community organizations and businesses came together and just dumped endless supplies of food so that evacuees could be fed at that shelter. You hear stories about the bucket brigade, people in Asheville who go out with these 5-pound buckets to help people flush their toilets because the water is not running. That's the true story, not the other ones used to exploit people's miseries for partisan reasons.
Rusty, there's a brand spanking new voter ID law in North Carolina this year. What happens if someone lost their voter ID in the storm?
And I'll say it is brand spanking new in terms of the presidential election for sure. It's been in place since 2023. There were municipal elections, very low turnout, but we are talking about a major race here. First of all, state law has a provision that says anybody who has lost their photo ID due to a natural disaster in the 100 days prior to the election can vote without a photo ID. They have to fill out an exception form, explain what happened, fill in a provisional ballot. But once that ballot is validated by the local elections board, that vote gets counted along with the rest of them. And there are other exceptions under state law for photo IDs. But people, if they have the time, if their local offices have the capacity, those photo IDs are being made and issued for free to people who don't have them. Most people have their driver's license, but it's an important question for people who may have lost their ID, certainly due to Helene. And again, there is a state provision in the statute that says you can vote just as long as you fill out the exception form and then submit a provisional ballot.
This week, JD Vance somehow discovered an outlet he hadn't already been interviewed by, and he recorded an hour-long podcast for the New York Times. It was contentious on occasions, like when they engaged in the now seemingly obligatory exchange about the 2020 election.
Senator, yes or no? Okay. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said it cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's
Vance,
the question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020
election? And I've answered
election?
your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours. When our own technology firms engage in industrial scale censorship, by the way, backed up by the federal government, in a way that independent studies suggest affect the votes, I'm worried about Americans who feel like there were problems in 2020. I'm not worried about this slogan that people throw. Well, every court case went this way. I'm talking about something very discreet. a problem of censorship in this country that I do think affected things in 2020.
Now, some have accused JD Vance of dodging the question there. I actually think he was answering the question, but he was arguing that the 2020 election was not a fair loss because the Hunter Biden laptop story was censored by big tech. So, if the New York Times is not going to answer his question, I will. First of all, just how much did big tech censor this story? Well, Twitter completely blocked links to the New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop. Totally. But only for 1 day, 3 weeks before the election. So, not sure that's exactly an election stopper in itself. How about Facebook, though? Well, according to Zuckerberg, Facebook restricted access to the story for 5 to 7 days, which means it wasn't blocked, but the story distribution on Facebook was decreased. People could share it, but its spread was reduced. So, just how much did Facebook reduce that spread? In the first 9 days after the story broke, it received over 54 million Facebook views. I wouldn't call that super well hidden. In fact, if we look at the search interest for the story, that first pink line is when it broke, and then those next 2 pink lines are when first Facebook and then Twitter supposedly censored it. You can see the interest in that story increased markedly after the so-called censorship, as is often the case with censorship, by the way. And then there was still another 2.5 weeks after the story was uncensored before the election was held. So the idea that this story was silenced, I think, is quite questionable. But what about those independent analysts that JD Vance talked about, who showed it cost millions of votes? Well, he's talking about the Media Research Centre there, who are the kind of independent analysts who describe themselves as, quote, leading the conservative movement in combating the left's efforts to manipulate the electoral process, silence opposing voices online, and undermine American values. So they're that kind of independent analysts. Anyway, they asked Democratic voters about whether it changed their vote, quote, that evidence exists, including bank transactions the FBI is currently investigating, that directly links Joe Biden and his family to a corrupt financial arrangement between a Chinese company with connections to the Chinese Communist Party, secretly intended to provide the Biden family with tens of millions of dollars in profits. Now, that is what you call a push poll, where you rig a poll by putting propaganda into the question to set up an answer that you want. And that's how they rigged up that 17% of Democrats, supposedly, would have voted against Biden had they only known that paragraph of Republican propaganda. That, of course, is a junk poll, which has little to do with the social media treatment of the Hunter Biden laptop story 3 weeks before an election. So, JD Vance, I know you watch the show. I reckon that is some serious malarkey there. Oh, by the way, JD, if you're worried about Twitter censoring the Hunter Biden story for 1 day, what would you say about a reporter hypothetically publishing some of the hacked Trump campaign information involving you, JD Vance, last month, and then the Trump campaign contacting X to get them to censor that material, and then Twitter blocking all links to the published material while also suspending the reporter's Twitter account, all that happening for 1 entire month? JD Vance must have been outraged by that censorship.
You think?
He would have hated it. By the way, a little bonus, just for the other side of the aisle. If Democrats are going to be pushing the 2020 election thing all the time, fair enough, big story.
Sure.
But when Axios asks House Democrats if they would certify a Trump victory, maybe don't get Jamie Raskin to say that if Trump won, quote, a free, fair and honest election, we obviously would accept it, but that he definitely doesn't assume Trump would use free, fair and honest means to win. Because that is exactly the formulation that annoys people when Republicans say it.
Regardless of who wins, you'll certify the results.
And regardless, of course, yes, if the election is free and fair and legal, and we pray and hope that it is.
When people hear you say, if it is free and fair, does that not undermine people's confidence in the election results?
Just a tip, don't do that.
Excellent rant. Well done. I hope you feel better now. That's it for another Fireside Chat. Planet America back 9 p.m. Wednesday night on ABC TV. And anytime after that you like on iView, YouTube and Facebook.
And we have another Fireside Chat next week as well. And don't forget the Pet Podcast and all the usual pod places.
Bye-bye.